Boker Tov, good morning. It's great to see everyone here and online. Rabbi Sarada and his whole Chevra friends, are in Israel with Cantor J. And we have a fantastic panel, and I'm blocking them from some of you, but as always, not as always, sometimes I do the announcements at the end, but here are a few announcements for today. Today at 3 p.m., Russell Stern, our accompanist, is playing at the Our Lady of Perpetual Health in Northbrook at 3 p.m. We have a home and tosh making March 1st, which you can sign up online, all ages. And for this age right here and on the screen, we have our Purim Spiel. And that will be March 4th. And at night, it's going to be a lot of fun, heavy appetizers, delicious oneg. You're going to want to come down for that. Oh, cocktails. Thank you, Stacy, who is championing many of these events. And if you have any questions about sign up, you should see her. And you can sign up for all of these events online. So now I've wasted the time. It's 10:01. I'm sure more people will be coming in. But if you don't start on time, Jim Schuster, my teacher in the room, will tell you, if you don't start on time, then the students just keep coming in later. So we're starting on time. It's great to see you on this President's Day weekend. I think it was Ashley who said, we should have a Choosing Judaism panel. And I said, that's a great idea. And we did have so many people to choose from. And I know my mom is online, but she was asking me, what's today going to be about? And she goes, is it all women? I said, no, it's 2 men and 2 women. Then she said, it's a good thing she can't talk. She goes, well, how old are they? I said, they are all younger than me. She goes, oh, this sounds fascinating. I said, and they're all super, super involved in the synagogue. She goes, oh, I'm very impressed. Thank you, Mom. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves. You probably already know them. Michael has he's got a badge on. He's on the board. Michael Boss. Susan Caden was on the board. Lou Hellenbush was on the board. And Laura. We weren't on the board. What? All right. But Laura, I love it. Right. She looks familiar. You have all seen her, all of you, because she sings in our professional choir. So we have quite the group. Michael, you said you'd start.
And here we go. Yes, my name is Michael Buss, and my family and I have been congregants here for 6 years now, I think. And I have 3 kids in the religious school here at Lev Learning, at Macomb, Soleil Lakeside, and we love it here. And you want me just jumping right into the story, right? Yeah. So here we go. Why choose Judaism? Well, for me, growing up, I grew up in a very religious household. In the Christian faith, particularly Assemblies of God. And we would go to church 3 times a week. We were very involved. I was raised primarily by a single mom, and she was very, very into her faith. And it was very much forced on me. And to the point where by the time I was able to and really start making my own decisions, I pretty much immediately stopped going. Pretty much once I had a driver's license and could figure out that if I had a job on Sunday, then I could just skip that. And I did, and had a lot of kind of negative feeling and emotion toward Christianity in general, but Assemblies of God particularly. And I totally disengaged religiously, yet felt still very compelled spiritually, to engage in the world, and went on a trek of discovery and started really researching and learning about all of the world's religions, and visited mosques and meditation centers, and if anything, I would say throughout my college years and graduate school, more than anything, I was probably most aligned with Buddhism, which was really fun for somebody who went to the University of St. Francis for an undergraduate degree and used to love to engage with the sisters during class to the point where, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. And you know, they're debating Jesus and Buddha and things like this. I'm like, I don't think you really understand Buddha, sister. And so went on that path of discovery. In graduate school, I met a lovely young lady. I was getting a master's degree in teaching. It was my last class. It was her first class. And it was right in Evanston. And we met there. She's from Highland Park. I was from the south suburbs. We met. I was wrapping up my degree. I was getting ready to move to San Diego. This was in October that we met. In February, I was moving and I moved to San Diego and she came with me. And here we are now. We're married 15, we're almost 16 years now. And we have our 3 children, and she grew up Jewish. And when we were, you know, I proposed, there was never any assumption that I would convert or anything like that. There was no pressure at all. We got married, we had our first child. And throughout that, I started thinking more and more seriously about, you know, throughout my learning about the different religions, I really fell in love with Judaism for a number of reasons, not the least of which is the rich history. I am a student of history. I have a master's degree in history as well. And I love the rich history that comes with Judaism. And I love the approach of Judaism and the vast difference from what I grew up with, where everything was this way, or else you go to a fiery death and eternity, and you know, and your family won't even be there with you because they're the wrong type of Christians and things like this. So it was a little heavy, and I really just love the idea of debate and discussion, and this can be all, you know, it's an intellectual and, you know, debate and discussion based at its core, I feel. And I just fell in love with it and decided of my own accord, I think I want to do this. So the rabbi who married us, who we just happened to be hooked up with, his name was Evan Moffick. And so, you know, my mother-in-law found a good Reform rabbi who would marry us in interfaith ceremony. And I really like the guy. You do too, hopefully. And he was the rabbi. This is when he was still in the city, and I was living in the city as well. And I went through all of my classes. I tried to learn Hebrew and failed like every other language I tried to learn. But I still, I stuck with it. And did the conversion. Did it right here in the chapel. It'll be 12 years ago this year. So the rabbi is hinting that I should have a bar mitzvah, and I don't know that he's not wrong, but I'm not sure yet. So that's something we're working on. But yeah, so here we are, involved, and like you said, somebody else on this panel kind of pulled me into the fold of the synagogue here a little bit more when she suggested that I maybe become a teacher here at the religious school, and I thought it was a good idea. So thanks, Sue. And did that for a couple of years, taught 7th grade here, loved it, but I also teach 7th grade as a career. So sometimes it's a little hard to be with 7th graders all day long and then come home and then go back and be with 7th graders in the evening. So I had a lot going on, so I reluctantly pulled back. And then I think I had about a year respite before Ashley tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, what do you think about maybe the vice president of the religious school? And I said, that doesn't sound like a good idea. I don't think I have time for that. And we went back and forth a few times, and I'm really happy I did it. I'm having fun at the board meetings, and there's all kinds of things that are going on, and I just like being involved and I wish I was more involved, but with 3 kids and a full-time job, part-time job. I just love being here.
You're being recorded, and then you said you wanted to be more involved. So we have the tape of that.
So I think that pretty much sums up. That's how I'm here today. And when Vanessa reached out, I said I'd love to do it, and that's pretty much my story.
So interesting. I've known Michael for a really long time and I didn't know that whole backstory, and he'll learn mine right now. So I'm Susan Caden. My family and I have been members here for about 15 years, although my husband and his parents have been members here for like 40 years maybe. So he grew up here at Legacy Solel. Like Michael, I was raised in the Christian faith. My dad was Catholic growing up. My mom was like vanilla New England Protestant. They went to like a congregational church, which I don't know if that exists outside of New England. So my dad's parents had both passed away by the time he was 21, and he kind of quickly let go of Catholicism. He went to parochial school, his entire life. I suspect, although no one said this directly to me ever, that like my parents probably wouldn't have gotten married, or maybe at least my grandparents wouldn't have been very excited about it had they been alive, when my parents actually did get married. I think that Catholicism was really important for my grandparents, but far less so for my dad. So I kind of watched or knew that background. But my family went to church every Sunday. I went to Sunday school. I was confirmed again in a Congregationalist church in New Hampshire. And even like as a pretty young person, part of that process, actually part of that confirmation process, we were supposed to attend other services with friends. So I went to the Catholic church in town and the Episcopal church in town. The family I babysat for was Episcopalian. I went to church with them on Sundays a lot. I would stay over Saturday nights and go with them in the morning. I went to college in North Carolina at a school that had a Methodist foundation. So the services there at the chapel on Sunday mornings were kind of more Methodist. So I've seen a lot of different things growing up. My parents were always involved. My dad taught Sunday school. My parents were youth group leaders when they were young. My mom now is a deacon on the board of the church where she attends in New Hampshire. So my family's always been involved in their religious institution. And like, my mom's super connected to her Christianity. My dad was just kind of more of a nature-loving, spiritual kind of guy. It's just a different vibe. And then in college, I started dating a gentleman who was Jewish. I was 19 when I met him, but like by the time our relationship was pretty serious, I was 21 maybe. And one summer, I knew that Judaism was important to Jonathan. I knew that he wanted his kids to be raised Jewish. There was not really a conversation of me converting or really even our relationship extending beyond college. And I had an unpaid internship in Boston the summer between my junior and senior year in college. My parents had moved to Massachusetts, so I had a Massachusetts ID, which enabled me to get a Boston Public Library card. I had no money. I was not being paid for the work I was doing. I just went to the library and checked out like every book they had on Judaism, which, like, as you can imagine, presented lots of different views on Judaism. Like, right? I knew a lot of different things, but some of them I like kind of talked to Jonathan about. He's like, we don't do that. Like, that's not really a thing. So I learned a lot, and it was in Boston, right? Like, there were opportunities to kind of experientially explore the religion as I was reading about it. So I spent that summer really learning a lot, just talking to him about it, becoming more and more interested in the religion. Went back to school for my senior year. He was here in law school at that point. And one of my teammates who was Jewish invited me to have a Seder in a bag with her in one of the dorm common rooms. And like, there was something about that moment that was like, when I think back on it, that was like a meaningful kind of moment. Lisa and I, like, literally on the table in a dorm room had this Seder. And I was starting to feel really like emotionally connected to the experience in the religion. So I moved to Chicago, started, that fall, I came here for services for the holidays that first fall. And I spent a few years, with Jonathan's family, exploring Judaism here in like an institutional sense, but also, and this really appealed to me, in the home, like in a very different way than my experience with Christianity that kind of took place in the church more. In the physical building. So I really liked that. And then I guess a year before we were married, I don't remember if we were already engaged or not. I was like, I think I want to like explore this more. I took some Midrash classes here. I took an adult Hebrew class, which also didn't go very well. But I still have the books, so I still have to look at them. All of that with Rabbi Taylor. And then I started meeting with him maybe once a month, every 6 weeks for about a year and a half. And I remember this clearly too. The first time I met with him, he said, look, no one gives me a bonus at the end of the year for the number of people who convert. Like, he's like, this is your process, your experience. I'm not going to tell you when you're Jewish. You're going to tell me when you're Jewish. And we just met. And there were times when we met and it was great. And there were times when we met, I'm like, this is not right. So it was definitely a process. And then I think it's been 25 years. Like, it's funny, like, I don't even, Vanessa asked us to think about our experience. And I was like, I don't even really think about it at all anymore. And so I looked back at like the statement that I wrote that day, the day of my conversion. I also had a ceremony here. Chapel wasn't built yet, but it was in the sanctuary. And in that, I talked about how the day was both extraordinary and ordinary, which is kind of how I feel about the whole process. So that's my experience. And now, I'm involved here. It all just kind of feels very ordinary and yet extraordinary.
Hello, I'm Lou Helvish.
Oh, wait, Susan,
Yeah.
what position did you hold?
I did the question, what position have you not held?
So formally, officially, I was, as is Michael now and was Lou, I was the vice president for the religious school, I think for 6 years. I was involved in hiring Ashley, which was a fun process, and Jay, actually, which was also a fun process. And then I've served on a number of other committees over the years, and now I'm on the Human Needs Committee with Floyd, which is a great group. Lots of different committees, largely connected to the school and the bylaws.
I'll start with that. As Susan said, I was the religious school president. Jim and I worked together on the religious school transition. I forget what we were called. We had a very formal and appropriate name, but we were. So I became the religious school vice president kind of right the year before maybe the merger started, and then stayed through that with Jim and the team, and kind of got everything running for a year maybe, and then passed the baton to my esteemed colleague Michael over here. Sorry, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
And I will echo Susan's. I did not know that story about either of you, so I appreciate hearing it here. My story is I grew up in upstate New York and mostly outside of Cincinnati, Ohio. I was raised Catholic. My mom's family is very Italian. My grandparents came from Italy. Outside of Lucca is where they're from. My dad's family is very, I guess, American is just the best way. They are all kinds of, but German Catholic. And we were Catholic in the way that, like, we were very serious. We went to church, and I was confirmed. I did classes and everything, but that was just kind of what you did. It was like, you're Catholic because you're Catholic. Shut up. What's the? Well, I don't get the question. Like, that's what we do. And so, I did everything, and I went to church and all that, but I don't know that I ever really, I was always, I was spiritual, and that was a way to express your spirituality in certain contexts. It is also, one of the things that sort of made me start looking into other things as I got older and I got into high school and college. It was kind of like, it was very dogmatic, and that, the area I grew up in was very, you were either Catholic or you were Christian. And the Christian people didn't like Catholic people religiously. We were all friends. I mean, it wasn't like religious strife or anything like that. But it was like every now and then you'd have a conversation of like, well, you're wrong because this, and just things like that. And then I went to college in New York and was living there. I still went to church when I first started going to college, and I studied a year abroad in Italy, and but I met my wife, who was raised Jewish, in college. And similar to the other stories, like we dated starting my sophomore year of college, and we didn't really we were just dating, and then but we never really broke up. So. But as we got
again, this is being recorded.
Well, no, I just mean to say, like, as we got more serious and like we got engaged, like there was never this conversation of like, oh, are you going to bird, or what are you gonna do, or like, how are you gonna do this, are you gonna do that? So we ended up just being kind of very secular. We were, I remember we looked into finding like a priest and a rabbi to marry us. Like that just like didn't really work out very well. And then, so we were gonna get married by a judge. My father-in-law said, like, can he be a Jewish judge? You know? And he was. We found a Jewish judge. So we got, we got married, and then we moved here to Chicago. Had our son Hayes, who's now a sophomore in high school. He, when we were starting, and I had like obviously learned a lot about Judaism throughout the course of, being with my wife and getting married, and because I would go to high holiday services with her family. We would have, Passover, and so I became familiar with the holidays, the traditions, and that, the focus on like the family being together and like how that part of it, and that it was really more, and I can skip to when I started learning more about it, it's about the time, like a lot of the religion is about the sanctity of time and like the moments that we have, and how we use those moments to, make everyone's life and the world a better place, rather than this idea that, you just have to like, and to be fair, there are forms of Judaism where you do just have to check boxes and that's what you have to do. And like, just like other religions. So I don't want to say we're like special as opposed to other people, but our particular form of Judaism is not that way, or at least the one we have. And I think that's really spoke to me and appealed to me, that like, it's very much about finding the holiness and the spirituality and the sanctity of moments and creating the space for that. Vanessa asked us what our favorite holiday is. The first thing I thought of was Shabbat, because we light the candles at our house with our family every Friday night. It's like really, really wonderful because I have 4 kids and they're age 15 to 5 and they're all over the place. And, sometimes we literally can't even drive them to all the things that they need to do. But on Friday night, we all get around the table, we say the prayers, we light the candles, and every week that's a really important thing for us to do. So I'll try to speed it up a little bit. My story, when we were here, Hayes, our oldest son, we lived downtown. He went to the preschool at, and the name is Sinai. There you go. He went to the preschool at Sinai, and we met this young rabbi. He was he's my age. He was, he just started. He was like the junior rabbi there, and we would go to like the little kid Shabbats, and we would, I got to know him a little bit. We had a lot of fun, and we were deciding, well, I said, what are we going to raise Hayes? Are we going to have like a religion in our family when we grow up? And, I said, well, we have to have I want to have something. I don't want to just do nothing. Like, that's not an option. And I wasn't going to raise him Catholic. So, and it's not that sounds bad, like that there wasn't, but that was, at that point, my relationship to Judaism was, my wife's family is Jewish, and, I think I like it, and it's a good religion for him. So I started taking the Introduction to Judaism class with the rabbi at Sinai and Rabbi Mafik, and got to know Rabbi Mafik and learned a lot about Judaism. The sanctity of time comes from the book, The Sabbath, by Abraham Herschel, that Rabbi Mafik gave me, a very famous rabbi, well known. So Herschel, did I say it right? Heschel, sorry.
Abraham Joshua Heschel.
Thank you. So I read that book, read some of his stuff from Rabbi Mafik, and, really got more interested in, and then as as our kids got older, I progressed kind of with them and like learned more about the religion. I worked with Rabbi Mafik, I sat with him, we had conversations. I tried to find the thing that I wrote like Susan did, but I couldn't find it because we're doing some work in our house and it's a mess. But then I, ultimately like came to it, in the same way. There was never any, which I think is another thing that I really like about our faith, is that like, there was never like, oh, you have to like put up or shut, like, where is the, when are you going to convert to Judaism? Like your family, no, there was never any pressure to do that. I really came to it on my own. And my conversion was I went to Rabbi Mafik to the mikvah, right. And it was cool historically also to learn how the baptism kind of came from that, and that, and all the connections that you realize as you learn more. But so that's, I ended up being Jewish, and then I got, as our kids started, we moved to the suburbs, we were looking for a temple to join. Just so happened that young rabbi that we knew from the city had, had a congregation out here. So we came to Solel, and our kids started school. I got involved, got to be on the board, got to be the religious school vice president, which was really great. We went through the merger, which is awesome because now we're bigger and stronger and greater, and it's just and this is just a really another thing that came to mind with my favorite holiday is just it's just the place. There is something about having a place where this is the community. Like the other one that came to mind was Neela at the end of the high holidays, like that last thing service on Yom Kippur. So I mean, Cantor Jay's not here, but they always do such a great job. And I don't know if it's because you haven't eaten or whatever, but that's just such an amazing feeling to be in that last moment and to have all of the symbolism and it goes back to creating that holy time of the gates closing and so yeah, and then my other part of my Jewish journey that I should mention is I was bar mitzvah here and with the adult bar mitzvah class, and I think it was 3 or 4 years ago now. Yeah, there were 6.
It was right before COVID.
Yeah, right. It was like April of 2019. You're right. And there were 6 or 7 of us. We still keep in touch. We're the Hebrew homies. We all learned the Hebrew enough to do our bat mitzvah. Some of us did very well. Others learned what they needed to know. And we had a service in the I remember it was April 19th, and we had all this. We all put food. We had a big event, and it snowed like 4 inches that day. It was a disaster, but from the weather point of view. But it was a lot of fun and everything. And it was a lot of interestingly similar people. But the stories that all of those people told me too was really made me feel like our religion at this place is very special. Because we had people like me who had converted. We had one woman who told the story of how when she was growing up Jewish, well, girls do not get to do that. And so she really wanted to take part in that ceremony. We had people who were born Jewish and just were never connected to a congregation or to the faith. They, just they had just been secularly Jewish, and they gotten more connected to the religion and, had taken on that process. So it was really cool to see the way all of the different paths in our congregation came together to be a part of that group. So that's my story, and
Hi everyone, I'm Laura Sauershaw. I came to Judaism in 2005 actually through a gig. I was hired, I'm a classically trained singer. I was hired to sing for the High Holy Days at Lakeside. And I was baptized, confirmed Catholic, had fine experiences with that, never really connected to it very deeply. My parents had always been kind of spiritual inspirations for me because they are very spiritual, both of them in different ways, and had their own kind of relationships with God. So they kind of kept a loose tether on me. They just wanted me to have that in my life in whatever kind of form it came to me. So 2005, I now absolutely think that this was God's plan for me to bring me to this gig. I started singing for the High Holy Days, and I was entranced. I was like, I can't believe I'm getting paid to be here and have a spiritual experience. And I was taken by everything from the beginning. I thought the prayers were beautiful. I loved the poetry. I loved the community. I really loved the opportunity to have that time for myself, for introspection and prayer, and just thinking about, I loved all the concepts of like morality, teshuva, service, tikkun olam, all of that resonated really deeply with me. The sermons, I mean, I remember telling myself, keep it together, girl, you are on the job right now, come on. And so I was very struck by it and kind of went on my merry way, came back next year for many years, found myself looking forward to coming back to this. And I started saying the prayers out loud when everyone was praying. Before, I didn't know if I should do that. I wasn't sure if it was like disrespectful to be doing that since I wasn't Jewish. And over the years, I just came to start learning more and more. You know, someone in synagogue I remember was like, "Sweetie, you can't take your water bottle in Yom Kippur. You can't bring your water bottle into the sanctuary because we singers, you know, we're always trying to hydrate and stuff." Leave that. No one's drinking water today. So I had a lot to learn, and that was what really intimidated me. I felt a very strong pull to Judaism right away, but I felt like there was so much I didn't know. I didn't really know anyone Jewish. I had no exposure to all the holidays or anything like that, and all the idiosyncrasies and everything. And that was kind of the start of me kind of not judging myself, but feeling like I wasn't quite worthy of this amazing religion because I had no ancestry. I just felt like it was this immense, amazing thing. And how would I ever be able to be a part of that, you know? So I held myself back for many years. But more and more, I started to feel called to it. And I told a friend in choir, who then told many other people in the choir. And they started encouraging me to start thinking about it more. And over the years, I had quietly taken the Introduction to Judaism class. I had started kind of practicing in my own home. I had made a couple of Jewish friends. I remember at the time I was working for an orchestra down in Millennium Park, and I was backstage, and I met a woman who was the wife of a musician in the orchestra, and she was like, "You should come over for Shabbat dinner sometime." And I was like, "Oh, you think I'm Jewish?" And she's like, "Yeah, I assumed you're not." And I was like, "Oh, well, yeah, I think I am. I don't know." And I was so flattered. I was like, "Oh my gosh, someone thinks I'm Jewish." And it was funny because years later, she was like, "Oh, I know you were a Sinai. I know you were there." So I just had a lot of encouragement from people. And then finally, a friend at synagogue was like, "Come on, let's do this. You love this. This brings you so much happiness. Talk to the rabbi." So I talked to Rabbi Sarada, and she was like, "You're ready. You know, this has been you for so long. Like, when do you want to do this?" So, why am I getting emotional? I love being a Jew so much. So I actually formally converted with Rabbi Sarada's help, and a couple people who are really important to me and my Jewish journey were there with me as well. So I did the Beit Din, I went to the mikvah, and I just remember squeezing my eyes shut when I was, you know, going under the water in the mikvah, like, I found myself, you know, I found myself. So I still have those feelings kind of like inadequacy, but it's all self-imposed, you know, and I think I have to just realize, and I do every day, that it's okay if I don't know everything, you know. I know how to read Hebrew, not super great, but I'm super excited I know how to read Hebrew. It's so cool. Oh, no. So, I mean, you know, and I don't know all the Torah stories. I couldn't tell you about every Jewish holiday for sure. But I try to grow and live in this faith, and it brings me so much happiness. So my journey has really been on my own. My parents, my family are totally supportive, my friends too. It's funny because when I meet people and it comes out that I converted, they're like, "Oh, did you marry someone Jewish?" And I'm like, "No, actually he's Hindu." So yeah, we have a blended faith marriage. We had a blended faith wedding. Rabbi Sarada married us, and then a Hindu priest from my husband's family's temple. So it was really cool. There's so many similarities in the religions and in the wedding ceremonies. So everything was blended together. So that's my story, and I feel really privileged and honored to be a Jew. I feel really proud of it. I just want to keep it alive, you know, for my own growth and learning.
I know Laura, since she's gone on this path and you had me crying, I'm a crier, but yeah, what moving stories. I do have some questions, but I'll take questions first. Does anyone here have a question they would like to ask? Okay, wait. Into the microphone.
I would like to know what the reaction of the other parents were to the other three. Or just talk about her reaction. I'd like to know what the families thought of the conversion.
Funny you should mention that. That was one of the questions I gave you. How did your families influence your decision?
My parents were, well, my in-laws were happy. My parents were, I think they were fine. You know, obviously we had conversations about it and we talked about it, and, you know, I wasn't the most diligently practicing Catholic for obvious reasons at the time. And, you know, I don't think, as I said before, like I was probably a little, you know, over the top with their like, hey, we're Catholic because we are. I mean, they're spiritual people. They still go to church. They're still, but they, you know, they understood. My dad and mom were both very understanding. You know, they say, you know, they raised me and my sister and brother all to sort of find our own path in life, and, you know, to find our own way. And they want us to be happy and make our own decisions. And they've had a great relationship with our kids, with their grandkids. They, you know, they do like Christmas presents and things like that. We do it in a very secular way, you know, where we have like a tree, but there's no, you know, but they have the nativity scene at their house. And when my kids go over, they, you know, they talk about it and ask questions, and it's a good chance for them to learn. And, you know, and we really try to just have, you know, grandma and grandpa they're not Jewish, they're Catholic, and that's fine. And we're Jewish, and that's, you know, that's what we are. And, you know, I think obviously if they weren't on board with that, that would have been more of a problem. But, you know, they have been very understanding and accommodating, you know, and you know, I think that helps. I mean, I think that I do, you know, stories and situations, of course, where, you know, it becomes a choice of either maintaining that relationship or, you know, not, or just not, because some people can't handle it. My grandmother actually, so my grandmother was a Scottish, you know, Protestant of some kind. She married my grandfather, who was Catholic, and they never spoke to anyone in her family ever again.
Wow.
So, you know, I hope that is something that's, as society is progressing forward into the future, that's becoming less common, but, you know, that's a reality that people deal with.
So my family and Jonathan's family all were equally supportive. My brothers and my parents were both here for my conversion. My mom went to the mikvah with me. And when I say here, like literally here in the sanctuary for the ceremony. They've been interested all along. I would say of anyone, probably Jonathan was the one who maybe outwardly was, I don't want to say least supportive, because that's not really fair to him, but like, I think he was concerned about being perceived as something that was forced or like required in some way. So like his support was like a little harder to kind of figure out from my perspective. But my family and Jonathan's family both have been really supportive. My parents used to come for holidays. They loved, we would, you know, on those years when Christmas and Hanukkah overlap, we would have like matzo ball soup and my mom's Christmas dishes, and we would celebrate, you know, all of it together. My parents have a menorah. I mean, my father's not alive now, but they have a menorah that they light. You know, for the boys, my son's b'nai mitzvah. My brothers wanted to learn the Hebrew, so Simcha recorded it for them and sent it to them so they could say the blessings. Like, you know, they've been supportive all along. I do remember it was important for my mom that the boys had a religious education. So in kindergarten, we put the kids in religious school. They started coming, you know, right, went all the way through confirmation. Meanwhile, my brother's kids have zero religious education, but whatever. I mean, speaking of my brother's kids, I was just there staying with them a few weeks ago. My brother had to be out of town, and my 10-year-old niece was like, I really want to have a Hanukkah dinner. So like we made latkes and we made brisket. Like, so the whole family has kind of experienced. My niece and nephew are in school outside of Boston, so of course they have plenty of Jewish friends, but like they play dreidel at Hanukkah. Like the families have really, you know, even extended to my brothers and their families have embraced it. And we did wait until our kids were in religious school before we went to my family's house for Christmas. We don't celebrate Christmas at all in any way. I know sometimes families, when there's conversion, like they still have a tree, or like we don't do any Christmas stuff at our house here in Highland Park. But the kids sure loved Christmas at my parents' house. But everything, it was always a celebration that we were sharing, not that we were celebrating. Like it was that we were careful about our language with them. They got stockings and gifts from grandparents, not from Santa. Like it was, we were intentional about that. My kids know that they're Jewish and they are, engaged in their college Jewish community. So tons of support. My mom once called me, she's like, I got a plane ticket, I'm coming for the sweet New Year. And I was like, which holiday did you pick? Like, very different. So, there's lots of support.
Yeah, so my mom, again, was a single mom, so primarily her, I think her view was definitely one of, as I mentioned, it was probably more Buddhist than anything, and I think to her that didn't really count as anything. It's something, it's more philosophy than religion anyway. But when I started dating Jamie and then getting more serious, and then also thinking like I want my children to have something in their life like a moral compass and guide. And I know while I didn't appreciate my upbringing in many aspects, I did find the value in that moral compass and wanted something like that for my kids. And when I made the decision to convert, my mom was super excited. I think being the same God, very, very much more similar than Buddhism, and finding that more Western Judeo-Christian type path was something that she was very happy about and has been supportive throughout. She was here for the conversion. She loves learning about Judaism and seeing, and just a couple months ago, like her best friend passed, and we were at her church, the church that I basically grew up in. She doesn't attend that church anymore, but we were there, and there were just the comments that I heard and people like saying things directly to me that I told her about. Her jaw dropped, which I wasn't very surprised because I grew up in it and I was used to it. But telling her some things and she was kind of taken aback and was like, but we all come from like all the Christians. We all have our roots in Judaism, and like she really sees the connection and sees the value and honors it. And I still we have an agreement. Like my kids don't spend the night on Saturday. Like I don't want them going to that church. And she's totally fine with that. Again, I'm an only child, so she doesn't, she's kind of has to roll with it. But she's been super supportive. Both she and my stepfather, who's been around for 25 years now, are super into it. And I will say for anybody who has kids or grandkids out there, interfaith marriages are the best. Because you don't have to share Christmas, because we do celebrate Christmas at home, right? You don't have to share the high holidays. You don't have to share Passover. You don't have to share Easter. And we do it all. And again, in our home as well. Like we don't do a tree because they're just messy. I don't know. But Santa still comes, because my wife had Santa when she was a kid growing up too, because Santa visits all the good boys and girls. So it's been good. And my mom has been here for services, and it's she's proud.
Before you go on, I'm just going to press in. What did the people at the church say to you? And you can gloss over it or whatever, but I think it's good for us to hear that. Well, not good. It's important for us to hear that.
Yeah. So, this was a very close one. I called her my aunt growing up. When my mom was single, she lived with us for a number of years. So we were very close. But this was just another connection, kind of like, I knew this other woman, but she felt compelled to come up and, again, it's Assemblies of God. They are on a mission to, evangelize and convert everybody. And if somebody strays away from the flock, we can do what we can. So she felt compelled to say something along the lines of, when you go into the box or, when you die, it doesn't end there. And, we can all be together again. And again, this is the dialogue I heard throughout my life growing up, but really a big part of my, I don't want to go so far as to say disgust, but I mean, that's kind of what it is. For that, just the guilt So it is something along those lines. And I told my mom about it, and she's just like, "Ah." She's like, well, you know, she's always like that. I'm like, I know. I'm like, and yeah, I don't know if my mom's watching. I posted this on Facebook.
There is a
beforehand.
Helen Bush on.
Well,
Wait, what was it?
Bowl, it would be Bowl, Boll. That's her baby name. So yeah, so that's, and I was ready for it, and I just nodded and smiled, and I said, I appreciate you, and I'm like, you need a hug? I mean, what am I gonna do? Like, but in a lot of ways it is, to me, that is the frightening aspect of, some sects of other religions.
My parents were super excited. I think they had been expecting it for a long time. When I finally said it, they're like, okay, great, we knew that already. I did have one family member who I'm not close with. I was gushing about the high holy days one year at Christmas time, and the person was kind of like, you're not thinking of converting, are you? And I kind of was like, I don't know, non-committal, because I was really embarrassed by that. But otherwise, I am who I am. This is who I want to be. This is who I was born. I was born Jewish. So that really doesn't bother me at all. And all my family and friends are really, really supportive. I mean, I remember my uncle gave me a dreidel for Christmas, which I thought was the cutest thing years and years ago. And my mom will, she says she's an honorary Jew. She loves, learning and participating in things with me. I also have my chosen Jewish family. Since I don't have anyone in my, actual blood family that's Jewish, I have my chosen family. So I have people who I'm really close with, who, I celebrate the holidays with and talk to, and people who have kind of shepherded me and mentored me through that as well.
Do you have any other? Oh, here we go.
So first of all, great. Thank you one and all for all your service to our congregation. So important to have just a wide variety of people involved. So thank you. My question is, a few of you have sort of noted you had a very specific point, whether it was music and liturgy or study and debate, and that was sort of the hook, if you will, into it. But over time, you say, while I came in this way, this is the part of the religion that really I'm even more excited about now. I'm wondering if, it's so multidimensional, if anyone wants to address, you thought you were going to get a lot of this, but you got opened up to something else that you didn't anticipate.
I'll give it a try. So one of the things that has become most appealing to me over time that wasn't initially similar to the stories here, I kind of learned and I like this, and then it progressed naturally. But over time, one of the things is we live in a very secular society, and it's very hard. I just really like the way we continue to honor sort of the tradition and spirituality of the Torah and those religious and spiritual teachings while living in our modern secular world. And I think that it's it's a very non-dogmatic view, which is really appealing to me. And I think that, it made the things that someone said to you, if you believe that the creator of the universe and the author of all things has decreed that believing in Jesus Christ as your only Lord and Savior will bring your soul to eternal paradise. And if you don't believe that, you're going to burn in hell forever. Well, then it makes a lot of sense to come over to Michael at a thing and say, gosh, this is an emergency. You have to get back into the Jesus fold, or else you're going to burn in hell forever. And I think that people forget sometimes that in our secular society, it's easy to think people don't really believe that, but they do. They actually believe that that's the case. Like they're not there. And so from their perspective, like that makes a lot of sense. You know, they're like, oh my God, like, you know, we have to help these people. And we don't do that. You know, we accommodate, you know, other people's beliefs. We recognize that, you know, the author of all things in the universe, you know, probably didn't write the scrolls of the Torah and put them, you know, in a box, you know, 5,000 years ago. I mean, I don't want to offend anyone, but you know, we recognize that secular reality, but we don't just like throw it all out. You know, we don't just then turn around and say, oh well, you know, science and you know, none of this means anything, and you know, we live in the modern world, and so forget it. You know, what's the difference? We keep our tradition alive, and we keep those teachings, and we adapt them and do what we do with them, which is, you know, our son's Hebrew name is Yohanan. And we picked that name because Yohanan ben Zakkai was the first rabbi, essentially. He went in 79 AD when Jerusalem was destroyed. He convinced the Roman emperor to let him and a few other priests from the temple go and create this kind of, you know, studying, like teaching religion that, you know, obviously has evolved a lot since then, but became, you know, the Judaism that we know of. And, you know, that way of adapting, like, you know, and being in the world, like living where we are, doing what we're doing, that's like the thing over time that's really made me think, you know, I mean, not to be dogmatic myself, but like that, you know, we're right. Like our religion is the right one, you know, like we're correct. So I, you know, that I don't know if that answers your question, but you know, if anybody else wants to respond.
I love that. In response to Ross's question, you know, I was 23 years old when I converted, so 5 or 6 years ago. So some of this may be just a reflection of like maturity over time, but initially, as I said, I was really drawn to kind of the home family aspect of the religion, some of the tradition, like Michael, I'm a student of history. But either as I've become more connected to the religion or as I've just gotten older or both, the kind of prayer and meditative aspect of the religion has really become so valuable to me. I feel, Vanessa asked us about our favorite holiday, and Yom Kippur is my favorite holiday, which is Ashley's also, because we talked about this, but maybe like an odd thing to say, but there is no equivalent to it in a Christian experience. And it's so deeply meaningful, and the full day of services, as Lou was saying, just like, it's just profound. And so that's been a change for me over time, kind of the element of prayer and meditate. Even just coming to a Shabbat service on a Friday night, I feel so meditative just to have that time and space to sit, because none of us do that very much. So that's been a change for me.
I think for me, like the biggest thing that I think particularly in this synagogue that has been the most appealing to me has been, you know, our social justice bent, right? Like when I taught here in 7th grade, you know, both years, you know, I was basically more or less given a blank canvas. Like I could basically do what I wanted, but like social justice is kind of like the theme, and service is the theme for like 7th grade as these kids are going into their mitzvah projects and they're preparing, you know, for what they're going to be doing. We kind of decided that like that would be like makes for a great curriculum. And you know, in the 2 years that I did it, you know, 1 year it was always about the kids and what they wanted, and 1 year we were able to we focused on addiction, and we were able to raise funds and do things to help send money to a synagogue out in Los Angeles. It's part synagogue, part halfway house, part rehabilitation center. And we were able to send, I think, like about 100 Shabbat dinners that they provide for people in need each week. And another year, the kids chose the environment, and we ended up going out into the woods in Ryerson Woods with Rabbi Ike and a whole bunch of 7th graders, and we chopped down buckthorn, and we served the community and the world in that way. And I think you know, just the rich history of social justice, you know, within this. In you know, in both combined synagogues, and you there's so much rich history that has come through here, and it's still happening, and people are doing amazing things here, and I'm just really proud to be able to be a part of that.
I think for me, the reason that I felt drawn to Judaism still very much is my top kind of connection with it, which is the spiritual and my relationship with God, and Judaism to me being kind of the ideal vehicle for myself through which to explore that. Some things that have come for me more recently have been, having more of like a Jewish community, which has been really exciting for me. I joined a Jewish choir, the Kol Zimra Jewish Community Singers, which is super, super fun, yeah. And as I said, I learned to read Hebrew, which is a really cool personal kind of goal of mine. So I'm just kind of daydreaming and exploring other things I want to do. I definitely want to be a bat mitzvah, and I want to work on that and accomplish that and have that spiritual growth. Lately, I would say more just celebration of the holidays and more kind of bringing the holidays and rituals and things like that into my home, and having more of that connection with friends and everything has been a surprise for me for sure.
As the moderator, I'm going to take the last question, and full transparency, you know that I'm going to ask this. I mentor, this person has to be a young rabbi, and she said she's working, with people who are choosing Judaism, and she said, what do I say about Israel? So I wanted you to speak a little bit about your relationship with Israel.
I think my relationship with Israel right now is one of longing, to be honest. I remember when I converted, someone on the Beit Din asked me, do you want to go to Israel? Do you feel invested in that? And I was like, oh yes. I mean, that's on my bucket list. I hope and pray one day I get to go there, and I want to celebrate Shabbat there. I want to go to the wall. I want to meet people, hopefully have a conversation in Hebrew with them, and be over there and explore that. That's something I really want, because I feel like I don't have roots in that way. So I want to connect to that land and maybe have those roots and deepen them. I will also say in recent months, when things with conflict have been more and more in the news, I have found myself feeling really fiercely loyal. And I think that just comes from being a Jew and hearing from a lot of people who have that ancestry in their family line, in their blood, hearing their experiences and their stories and feeling connected to that and wanting to support that.
I've never been to Israel, and similar to that, I look forward to going someday. I don't know enough about probably very specific, to say anything about the political, situations. I do think that there's something to the fact that sort of Israel is held to kind of a different standard than other countries. But you also see some of what's going on there now, and you're kind of, are they kind of giving up that moral high ground in some sense? I don't know. I don't know enough about all to say anything really. Personally, I hope to go there one day. I have been working on a hotel development there for a number of years, and so every couple of months I get on the phone with some Israeli attorneys and we yell at each other for an hour or so. But
That's the true Israeli experience.
yes, so I have, I talk to people there and have some just, things there. And I think the interesting thing, just from that experience, in terms of my relationship to Israel, is, a lot of times when people, I think, think about Israel, they forget that there's just a bunch of people living their lives in Israel and, going about their day-to-day lives. And, yes, there are political problems, political issues, and there are political problems and political issues here that everyone has to deal with. So, yeah, that's my that's.
So as Vanessa said, she gave us this question in advance, and I've had this conversation with Rabbi Malvik. I don't really feel that connected to Israel. And I mean, I'd like to go there, but there's dozens of places in the world I'd like to go. I'm not sure it's even that high on my list. My kids want to go. I'm sure they'll take birthright soon. One of my sons took Hebrew at Highland Park High School. He learned about Israel all along. My husband's never been, he's a little risk averse. Never been, the rest of his family has. I'm sure we'll go. It doesn't feel critical to me in any way.
As a public school teacher, I'm prepared for this question. We talk about Israel sometimes, and with all issues, being a social studies teacher in a public school, I always, despite whatever my views are, I always say, well, there's some people who might say fill in the blank. So while I do understand and have a fair amount of understanding of the history of Israel, I definitely, enjoy kind of analyzing both sides and sparking the debate within my classes, and we discuss things, and when things happen in the news and current events, and we have open discussion about that, and it's rich and it's good. As far as myself, I really want to go. One of our panelists is in Israel right now, and I'm pretty jealous of her. I've actually been really trying. We just had my first son's bar mitzvah last year. The next kid is coming up next year, and we have really nothing planned. I was really hoping I could convince my wife and her side of the family, we should just go to Israel and do as much as there. My wife has been to Israel when she was younger, I think in her 20s, early 20s. She and friends went, and doesn't really have not super stoked about going back. I mean, she doesn't like flying. There's a lot of things. But I would love to go. I've tried to convince. I don't think I'm going to win that one, but I would like to go and explore and kind of get my own feet on the ground to get that experience and that feeling, and kind of explore for myself.
We will be going with Macomb 2025. So, and you've got that third kid. So
I've got the third kid, so I keep trying.
Oh,
yeah.
I mean, I guess based on all these stories that we've all told, I would tell your friend who's a young rabbi, when people ask, what do I say about Israel? I mean, I don't know that there's really anything to say. I mean, everyone can, at least in our version of Judaism, we have, I know, talking to different people in our congregation, we have the range of views on Israel represented here, and that doesn't make any of us more or less Jewish. So if your decision to be my Jewish friend, when I told him I was converting, said you've chosen to be chosen. So if you're choosing to be chosen, then you don't really need to have a view on Israel necessarily. You're certainly welcome to have one, but it really shouldn't be about what you think of Israel, whether you want. If that's why what you think of Israel is deciding whether or not you're going to be Jewish. I mean, I don't know.
Well, I will be referencing the minute on this and telling her to watch it. So she did that. I thought what a great panel. I do have a couple of announcements. I know I say this every week, but you're not going to want to miss next week David Barak. And talking about Israel, he's talking about the reform movement in Israel. And he is a Jewish historian. He works at Northwestern. He's going to talk about contemporary successes and challenges. And with what's been going on in the news, we're going to have a lot of questions for him, and I'm sure he's going to have a lot to tell us. Rabbi Sarada Cantor J studied with him up at camp recently and really liked him. Lunch and Learn with Rabbi. Tomorrow's the last day to sign up for a delicious homemade lunch served here in depends how many people sign up, but either here in the library. The porn spiel is coming up. Please sign up. March 4th, it's going to be fun and delicious. And we have Musa on Friday. There is no musical meditation because Cantor is in Israel, and Heschel on Thursdays. So you almost have something to do every day of the week. If you need any links, please see me or Stacy. And I want to thank our panel once again. What a great one. And you all can come up, and I'm sure they'll stay around. They're very busy, and I kept the paparazzi out, but I think they could take a couple of questions.
I wanted to just say thank you to the panel. I'm watching from online. We have almost over 30 people that were on virtually, and lots of fabulous kudos and thank yous from them. You can't see their comments, but the authenticity, the openness, and sharing your time with us, there's been a lot of thank yous.
Someone said they could listen to you all day. Thank you, Alice, but we are going to have to cut this off now. Thank you, thank you.
That was good.
Oh, I was thinking when I was